What if I told you that the best parts of your life haven't even happened yet, but they're waiting for you on the other side of risk? Think about it. Every powerful story you've ever heard, every hero you've ever admired, every legend that inspired you, it all began with a risk. Nobody remembers the person who stayed safe, who played small, who never dared. But the world never forgets the one who stood at the edge of fear and said, "I'm going anyway." Right now, you might be living in routine, in patterns that feel predictable, safe, and comfortable. But here's the truth. Comfort never wrote a story worth telling. The people who lived cautiously, who clung to the familiar, who never leaped into the unknown, they may have survived, but they didn't live. And when the final chapter of their life closed, they left behind nothing but silence. No story, no impact, no legacy. But you don't have to live like that. You have a choice. And that choice is this. Are you willing to risk not just money, not just time, but your pride, your certainty, your fear of failure? Because that's what risk demands. It demands that you step into a place where you don't know how it will end. And that's exactly why it becomes a story worth telling. Every scar, every failure, every victory, it all comes from a risk you were brave enough to take. And when people look at you, when they hear your story, they won't be moved by how safe you were. They'll be moved by the moments you faced fear and said, "I will not back down." So here's my question to you. When your life flashes before your eyes, when all that you are is reduced to a story in someone else's mouth, what kind of story will it be? One of hesitation, or one of courage, one of what ifs, or one of I did it anyway. Because the truth is simple. No risk, no story. Comfort has a way of tricking us. It whispers in your ear, "Stay here, you're safe. Don't move, don't try, don't push." Why make things harder when you can keep them easy? Comfort feels warm, it feels predictable, it feels like a shield protecting you from failure. But here's the catch. Comfort doesn't create history. Comfort doesn't build legacies. Comfort doesn't shape extraordinary lives. It keeps you alive, yes, but it doesn't make you come alive. Think about every person who ever made their mark on this world. Did they do it by playing safe? Did they reach greatness by staying in the cozy zone where nothing could touch them? No, they walked into the unknown. They risked, they stumbled, they suffered, and they built something because they refused to let comfort cage them. History remembers the risk takers, the dreamers, the ones who dared to leave the harbor. No one ever told stories about the person who sat on the shore watching the waves, wishing they had the courage to sail. Comfort seduces you because it feels good in the moment. That's the trap. It convinces you that safety is success. But safety is not success. Safety is stagnation. If all you do is stay where you are, you're not living, you're just existing. You are breathing, but you're not evolving. And eventually that comfort that feels so sweet in the short term will rot into regret in the long term. Years will pass, and you'll look back at all the chances you didn't take, all the opportunities you ignored, all the stories you could have lived, but never dared to write. The truth is, greatness has always demanded discomfort. Comfort is a cage disguised as freedom. It tells you, "Stay here, you're free to relax, free to rest, free to be safe." But in reality, it's locking the door on your potential. It's holding you prisoner, stopping you from discovering who you could have been. You don't grow in comfort. You don't become extraordinary in comfort. You only grow when you're stretched, when you're challenged, when you're forced to risk failure in the pursuit of something bigger. Look at athletes. Do you think Olympic champions achieved greatness by staying comfortable? No. They broke their bodies down day after day, endured pain most people can't imagine, sacrificed comfort so they could stand at the top of the world. Entrepreneurs who built empires didn't get there by staying safe. They risked their money, their reputation, their sanity, and sometimes even their relationships because they knew comfort would never give them the story they wanted to tell. Even in relationships, the best ones are built not by staying in a safe emotional shell, but by risking vulnerability, risking rejection, risking the courage to truly open up. And here's the thing. Comfort is seductive because it doesn't hurt right away. There's no instant pain in staying safe. If you don't take that chance, if you don't go for that dream, nothing feels broken. You just carry on with your day. You're weak, But years later, that comfort becomes poison. It becomes regret. It becomes regret. It becomes a heavy weight of what ifs. And by then it's too late to go back. Comfort kills more dreams than failure ever will. Because failure at least teaches you, shapes you, grows you. Failure hurts, but it leaves you with wisdom and strength. Comfort leaves you with nothing. It strips you of the chance to become someone remarkable. It leaves you invisible, forgotten, unremarkable. Think about it. Every story we tell, every movie we watch, every book we love, it's not about the person who stayed safe. It's about the one who risked, who dared, who endured. Comfort never made history because history is written in the ink of risk and sacrifice. The men and women who changed the world, the ones who inspire generations, are the ones who stepped out of comfort and into uncertainty. And yes, many of them failed along the way. But failure in pursuit of greatness is still a better story than a lifetime of playing small. So, if you want your life to matter, if you want to create a story worth telling, you must be willing to step out of the comfort that feels so safe but keeps you invisible. You must risk looking foolish, risk stumbling, risk being misunderstood, because that's the price of a life that inspires. You can't build a powerful story from the safety of a cage. Ask yourself, are you living a life that people will talk about when you're gone? Or are you just blending into the background, staying safe, staying small, staying comfortable, because nobody remembers the comfortable? Nobody writes songs about the safe ones. Nobody studies the people who never dared. Comfort is easy, risk is hard, but risk creates history. Risk creates legacy. Risk creates a story worth telling. And at the end of your life, when you look back, you won't care about how safe you played it. You'll only care about whether you truly lived. So step out of comfort, step into risk, step into the unknown. Because comfort never made history, but risk always has. Fear is one of the most misunderstood emotions we experience. Most people believe fear is a signal to stop, to retreat, to turn back. They think fear is a wall meant to protect them from danger. But the truth is, fear is not a stop sign, it's a gateway. It's the signal that you are standing at the edge of growth, staring into the unknown. And your body and mind are screaming because you're about to step into territory that can transform you. Think about the times in your life when you felt the most alive, the most proud, the most changed. It wasn't when you were comfortable, when everything was predictable, when nothing challenged you. It was when you were afraid, but pushed forward anyway. Fear has a way of sharpening you. It makes you alert. It makes you present. It makes you aware that something important is happening. Fear is a signal that what's on the other side matters. Here's what most people get wrong. They treat fear as an enemy instead of an ally. They avoid the very situations that could change them. They avoid the hard conversation because they're afraid of conflict. They avoid taking the leap in their career because they're afraid of failure. They avoid opening their heart because they're afraid of rejection. And by doing that, they deny themselves growth. They deny themselves life. The irony is that the very thing you're afraid of is usually the very thing you need to do. Fear is the compass that points you toward the path of growth. Imagine standing at the doorway of opportunity. On one side, you have comfort, predictability, and safety. On the other side, you have uncertainty, risk, and potential. Fear is that heavy feeling pressing down on you as you consider stepping through the doorway. Most people take that feeling as a reason to turn back. But the ones who understand what fear truly is know that stepping through it is the only way forward. They know the door will not open unless they move through fear, not around it. Think about the child who learns to walk. At first, they're terrified to let go of the table, terrified to fall, but the moment they take that first shaky step into fear, they unlock an entirely new world of freedom. That's how growth works. Every stage of your life that has expanded you has required you to walk through fear. Starting a new job, speaking in front of a crowd, moving to a new city, falling in love, every single one was scary. But those experiences made you who you are today. Without those moments, you'd still be standing on the sidelines, watching instead of living. Fear also strips away illusions. When you are afraid, you see your true self. You find out what you're made of. Fear reveals your weaknesses, but it also reveals your strength. It forces you to dig deeper, to summon courage you didn't know you had. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. And the more you practice walking through fear, the stronger and braver you become. Each time you face it, you build a new layer of resilience. And that resilience compounds. Soon, the things that once terrified you become normal. And the things that are now normal once seemed impossible. History is filled with people who walk through fear instead of letting it cage them. Explorers who risked their lives to sail into unknown oceans. Leaders who stood up against oppression, knowing it could cost them everything. Innovators who faced ridicule and doubt, but brought ideas to life that changed the world. Every single one of them felt fear. But they didn't run from it, they let fear guide them. They saw fear as proof that what they were doing mattered. And let's be honest, fear is never going away. You can wait for the perfect moment when you don't feel afraid anymore, but that moment will never come. If you wait until you feel completely ready, you'll wait your entire life. Fear is part of the process. Growth and fear are inseparable. If you're not feeling fear, you're not growing. If your heart isn't racing, if your palms aren't sweating, if your mind isn't doubting, you're probably still stuck in the same safe place you've always been. Here's the key: the more you step into fear, the more your brain learns that you can survive it. The presentation you thought would kill you, you get through it. The business risk you thought would destroy you, you learn from it. The rejection you thought would break you, you realize you're still standing. Every time you survive fear, you rewire yourself. You prove to yourself that fear is not fatal. And once you understand that, fear loses its power over you. The real danger is not fear. It's letting fear dictate your life. Because when you do, you shrink. You start making your world smaller and smaller until there's nothing left but a safe little box where nothing grows. That's not living. That's existing. But when you step through fear, your world expands, your capacity grows, your confidence multiplies, and suddenly the very things that once scared you become the stepping stones of your success. So the next time you feel fear, don't retreat. Don't let it convince you that it's a sign to stop. Instead, recognize it for what it truly is, an invitation. Fear is the gateway to growth. It is the threshold between who you are and who you could become. On one side of fear is the life you're living now. On the other side is the life you dream about. And the only way to cross is to walk straight through it. When you stop running from fear and start embracing it, everything changes. Fear becomes fuel. Fear becomes your compass. Fear becomes the proof that you're moving in the right direction. And when you look back years from now, you'll realize that every great thing you achieved came after fear. Every story worth telling began with a moment that scared you to death, but you did it anyway. That's growth. That's life. That's freedom. Fear is not your enemy. It's your doorway. And the only question is, are you brave enough to step through? Failure is one of the most feared experiences in human life, yet it is also one of the most necessary. We spend so much of our lives running from failure, trying to avoid it at all costs, as if it were some kind of disease. But in reality, failure is the currency we pay for greatness. It is the ticket to the kind of story that people remember. If you want a life that is safe, predictable, and forgettable, avoid failure. But if you want a life that is meaningful, impactful, and extraordinary, you have to be willing to fail. Because failure is the price of a great story. Think about the stories you tell when you're with your friends or family. You don't tell stories about the easy victories, the things that came naturally, the moments where nothing went wrong. Those aren't the stories that captivate people. The stories you tell, the ones that make people lean in and listen, are the ones where you struggled, where you messed up, where you took a risk and it didn't go as planned. Those stories are rich with life because failure gives them weight, drama, and depth. And in those failures, there is always a lesson, always a moment of resilience that shaped who you became. The truth is, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. Every person who has achieved something remarkable has walked through countless failures to get there. Athletes fail in training again and again before they ever win championships. Entrepreneurs watch businesses collapse before they ever build something that lasts. Artists create work that no one notices, no one appreciates, before they create their masterpiece. Every single success story is stitched together with failures. Without those failures, there would be no story to tell, no growth to celebrate. The reason failure feels so painful is because it threatens our pride, it strips away the illusion of control and exposes our vulnerabilities. It reminds us that we are human, that we are imperfect, that we are not invincible, and yet it is exactly in those moments of failure that we become real. Failure humbles us, but it also grounds us. It brings clarity. It forces us to ask ourselves, how badly do I want this? Am I willing to get back up and try again? Or will I let this moment define me? Failure doesn't have the final word. You do. Most people fear failure because they think it means the end. They think failing is a verdict, a judgment that they are not good enough. But failure is never final unless you stop trying. Failure is simply feedback. It's life showing you what doesn't work, what needs to change, what you need to learn. It's a teacher disguised in pain, and if you're willing to listen, failure will guide you to the very path that leads to your breakthrough. The greatest achievers in history weren't the ones who never failed. They were the ones who failed more than anyone else because they kept putting themselves in the arena. Failure also makes the story worth telling because it proves courage. Anyone can walk the easy road, the safe road, the road where the risk of failing is small. But those stories don't inspire anyone. The stories that inspire us are the ones where someone faced the possibility of failure and still chose to act. When someone risks everything for a dream, knowing they might lose, that's what moves us. Failure becomes a symbol that you dared to try. And when you dare to try, even if you fail, you're already living a story bigger than the ordinary. Imagine watching a movie where the hero never struggles, never stumbles, never loses. Would you stay until the end? Probably not. We're drawn to stories where the hero faces failure because it reflects our own lives. We all know what it feels like to fall short, to lose, to be embarrassed. And so when we see someone else fail and rise again, it resonates deeply. It reminds us that our own failures don't have to define us. They can refine us instead. The stories of failure you carry become the foundation of your strength. They give you credibility, authenticity, and resilience. People don't connect with perfection, they connect with scars. Your failures are the proof that you lived, that you tried, that you risked, that you cared enough to go all in. When you look back at your life, the failures will not be the parts you regret the most. They will be the parts that shaped you, taught you, and built the character that carried you to where you are. And here's the thing, failure doesn't just give you a story, it gives you freedom. When you realize that failure is survivable, that it's not the end of you, you stop being paralyzed by fear. You stop living cautiously. You start taking bolder risks because you understand that even if you fail, you will grow, you will learn, you will come back stronger. And that mindset makes you unstoppable because nothing can hold back someone who is unafraid of falling. Failure is the price of a great story because it strips away the illusion of certainty and replaces it with truth. It teaches you that the journey matters more than the outcome, that the act of showing up and trying is itself a victory. It reveals the depth of your character and the size of your courage. Without failure, your story is shallow. With it, your story becomes rich, layered, inspiring. So stop running from failure. Stop treating it as something to be ashamed of. Start seeing it as the price you gladly pay for a life that is worth talking about, worth remembering, worth living. When you embrace failure, you embrace growth. When you embrace failure, you open yourself up to experiences you would have never had otherwise. When you embrace failure, you create a story that echoes beyond your own life. The greatest stories ever told were not about people who played it safe. They were about people who risked, who dared, who failed, and who rose again. And your story, your great story, will be no different. Failure is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the chapter that makes your story worth telling. Risk is not just about stepping into the unknown. It's about stepping into who you really are. Every time you take a risk, you are chiseling away at the version of yourself you've been told to be, and you are shaping the person you're meant to become. Playing it safe may protect you from failure, embarrassment, and loss, but it also protects you from discovery of your strength, your potential, your courage, and your voice. Without risk, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose yourself, because it is in risk that you find your true identity, and it is through risk that you build a legacy worth remembering. Think about the people you admire most, the ones whose names stand out in history, in culture, in everyday life. None of them lived safely. None of them avoided risks. They are remembered not because they stayed in their comfort zones, but because they stepped out and did something others were too afraid to do. They risked their reputations, their security, sometimes even their lives for something bigger. And because they did, they left behind more than just accomplishments. They left behind a legacy that continues to speak long after they're gone. The truth is, identity is not something you are handed. It is not something you inherit or stumble upon by accident. Identity is something you forge. It's created in the moments where you put yourself on the line, when you decide to take the risk of being misunderstood, of being rejected, of failing in front of others. It's in those moments that you discover who you are and what you're made of. Risk reveals your core. It shows you where you are strong, where you are weak, and where you need to grow. Without risk, your identity remains shallow, untested, and fragile. So many people never truly know who they are because they never take the risk of stepping into the unknown. They settle for borrowed identities, living out the expectations of their families, their cultures, their peers. They adopt roles instead of building character. And at the end of their lives, they may have played it safe, but they never really lived. They never took the risk of discovering themselves. If you want to know who you are, risk is the path, because it forces you to answer the hardest questions. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are you willing to sacrifice for? Risk not only creates identity, it creates legacy. Legacy is not about wealth, titles, or awards. Legacy is about impact. It is about the story people tell when you are no longer in the room. And the truth is, people do not talk about the ones who played small, who lived cautiously, who never dared. People talk about the ones who risked something for something greater. They talk about the ones who had the courage to step forward when everyone else held back. Legacy is born in those moments of courage. But legacy isn't something that happens only after you die. Legacy is being written right now in your choices, in your actions, in your willingness to risk. Every decision you make either adds to your legacy or diminishes it. Every risk you take builds the story you will leave behind. Every time you step into the unknown, you carve your name into the memory of others. And every time you hide from risk, you erase an opportunity to leave a mark. Here's the paradox. The very thing we fear about risk, the uncertainty, the possibility of failure, is the same thing that makes it powerful. If there were no risk, there would be no glory. If there were no chance of failure, there would be no honor in success. Risk gives your actions weight and meaning. When you risk, you are saying, this matters to me enough that I'm willing to put myself on the line for it. That kind of declaration creates an identity of strength and courage, and over time, it builds a legacy of significance. Think about the people who have left lasting legacies. Leaders, creators, innovators, trailblazers, they all risked. They risked being mocked for their ideas. They risked being isolated for their beliefs. They risked their security for their visions. And because they risked, we remember them, we study their lives. We draw inspiration from their stories. Their legacies were not built in safety, they were built in risk. And let's make this clear, risk doesn't always mean gambling recklessly or making irrational leaps. Risk means being willing to move forward even when the outcome is uncertain. It means being willing to step into a situation where you might fail, where you might lose, where you might be rejected. It's about being brave enough to test yourself and your vision against the unknown. And when you do, you don't just create results, you create a story. That story shapes your identity and becomes the legacy you leave behind. The irony is that people think avoiding risk will keep them safe, but what it really does is erase them. Playing it safe may protect you from pain, but it also protects the world from ever experiencing your greatness. Playing it safe ensures that your name will fade, that your story will never be told, that your life will be forgettable. Risk is the only path to being remembered. Risk is the only way to create a legacy. One day, every single one of us will leave this world. That's not a choice. But what we leave behind, that is a choice. You can choose to leave behind a story of caution, of safety, of never stepping out of line. Or you can choose to leave behind a story of courage, of risk, of stepping into the unknown, even when it terrified you. That choice is being made in every risk you take or don't take today. Your identity is forged in risk. Your legacy is written in risk. And the world does not need more people who play small, who hide in comfort zones, who bury their dreams out of fear. The world needs people who risk. People who risk standing for something. People who risk pursuing something bigger than themselves. People who risk living fully. So when you face that choice to risk or to stay safe, remember this: safety may preserve your comfort, but risk creates your identity. Risk shapes your character. Risk leaves behind your legacy. And when your story is told, it will not be about the times you played it safe. It will be about the times you risked it all. That's the story worth living. That's the story worth leaving. Your life is a story, whether you like it or not. Every choice you make, every action you take, every fear you face or avoid adds a line to that story. And here's the truth: most people live their lives as if they are merely existing, as if the pages of their story are being written by chance or circumstance. They let comfort, fear, and indecision dictate the plot, and when they finally look back, they realize they don't have a story worth telling at all. But you don't have to live that way. You can take control. You can decide that your life will be a story that matters, a story worth reading, a story that inspires. And the only way to do that is to embrace risk, challenge, and the unknown. Every day, you're writing your story. It's happening in the little decisions and the big ones. When you choose to step into discomfort rather than stay safe, you are writing a chapter of courage. When you take a leap into the unknown, despite fear, you are adding a chapter of growth. When you endure failure but rise again, you are penning a chapter of resilience. Your life is not a random collection of events. It is the narrative you build through your choices. And the more intentional you are about those choices, the more powerful your story becomes. Most people think stories are made of grand events, of fame, fortune, and recognition. But the reality is that stories are made of the moments where you dared, where you risked, where you were fully alive. Your story is made when you refuse to settle for mediocrity, when you push yourself beyond what is easy or comfortable. It's written in the sweat of effort, the courage to speak your truth, the willingness to stand alone. Ordinary days may feel insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate into a story that defines you. Fear is the most important element of your story. Every story worth telling contains moments of fear, uncertainty, and risk. If you never felt fear, if you never risked, your story will be flat and forgettable. But when you face fear and step forward anyway, that's when the story gains weight, drama, and meaning. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you are shaping a narrative that others will admire. And even more importantly, you are shaping a version of yourself that knows its own power. Failure also writes chapters in your story. Every time you stumble, every time a plan falls apart, every time you experience loss or rejection, you are gaining material for a story of transformation. Those who avoid failure may feel safe, but they also live without depth, without lessons, without growth. Your failures are not just setbacks, they are the crucibles that forge your character. They make your story rich, compelling, and real. No one remembers a life that never struggled, but everyone remembers a life that overcame. Risk is the spine of your story. A story without risk is lifeless, flat, and forgettable. Risk doesn't mean recklessness. It means choosing to step into the unknown, choosing to push boundaries, choosing to test yourself against life's challenges. When you take risks, you create conflict, stakes, and transformation, the very things that make a story captivating. Risk is what turns an ordinary existence into a narrative worth retelling. When people hear your story, they will not admire the safe choices. They will admire the courage, the audacity, and the determination that came from daring to risk. Your story is also defined by impact. How many lives do you touch? How many people are influenced, inspired, or helped because of your actions? Legacy is a part of your story, and risk is the vehicle through which your legacy is often created. The people who are remembered, celebrated, and emulated are those who took the chances that others wouldn't. They didn't wait for certainty, comfort, or approval. They acted, and because they acted, their story continues to live on beyond their own lifetime. Here's the reality. You can't pause your story. Time keeps moving, and each day you delay action, each day you choose fear over courage. You are allowing the blank pages to be filled by circumstance rather than intention. One day your life will be a book that is finished. The chapters already written cannot be erased, and the chapters yet to come will define whether that book is memorable or forgettable. The question is, what kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want a story of hesitation, of fear, of what-ifs? Or do you want a story of courage, of resilience, of relentless pursuit? Living intentionally means being the author of your own story. It means understanding that comfort, fear, and failure are not obstacles. They are tools. They are the ink, the paper, and the punctuation that give your story depth. Every challenge you face is a plot twist. Every risk you take is a turning point. And every success, no matter how small, is a victory in your narrative. By embracing discomfort and uncertainty, you are ensuring that your story will be full of meaning, not emptiness. Ultimately, your life is the story you tell, but the responsibility to make it remarkable falls squarely on your shoulders. No one else can write it for you. No one else can take the risks, face the fear, or endure the failures in your place. The chapters you leave behind, the legacy you create, the impact you make, these all come from the choices you make today. And when you look back years from now, you will realize that the story you lived is the only thing that truly matters. So choose to live boldly. Choose to embrace fear, to take risks, to endure failures, and to step into the unknown. Choose to write a story worth telling, a story that inspires, a story that leaves an imprint on the world. Because comfort may keep you alive, but risk, courage, and resilience make your story unforgettable. One day, people will tell your story, not because it was easy, but because it was real, because it mattered, because you dared. Your life is the story you tell. Make it one worth reading, make it one worth remembering. Make it a story that echoes long after you are gone. So here's the truth you need to hear. Your life will not be remarkable. If you play it safe, comfort will never make history. Fear will never disappear on its own. Failure will never stop knocking at your door. But if you step into fear, if you embrace failure, if you dare to risk, that is when your story begins. The moments that challenge you, the moments that scare you, the moments that make you question everything, those are the chapters people will remember. Your identity is shaped in the crucible of risk. Your legacy is built on the courage to act. When everyone else hesitates, every choice you make today is a sentence in the story you leave behind. And one day, when your life is a book, no one will care about the safe choices you made. They will remember the risks you took. They will remember the courage you displayed. They will remember that you lived fully, even when it was hard, even when it was scary, even when it could have failed. So step forward, take the leap, face the fear, accept the possibility of failure, because the story of your life is waiting to be told, and it will only be unforgettable if you risk. No risk, no story, no leap, no legend, no courage, no chapter worth reading. This is your call. Stop waiting. Stop hesitating. The story of your life, your legacy, your identity, your greatness depends on one simple truth. If you want a life worth remembering, you must be willing to risk it all. Step into the unknown, embrace the challenge, and write a story that will echo long after you're gone.